Hey everybody, Dustin here from Backcountry Cuisine, and today we're answering the question, what is the best camp stove to buy? What is the best camp stove to buy ever? It depends. There's no easy answer for this one. It depends on what you want. Ask some questions like what kind of camping do you want to do? And then we're going to try to narrow it down a little bit because there's a lot to choose from. These are all my stoves. You might say I've got a lot of stoves. You might say I've got a stove problem. Hi, my name is Dustin and I have a stove problem. Okay, so let's start off with some basics. Let's just talk about the different types of stoves. So I put them into 4 categories. Number 1, white gas stoves. Now there's a lot of different ones, but basically what you've got is a liquid fuel. You fill up a liquid fuel into your bottle that is delivered over to your stove. It heats up your stove and you start burning. But because it starts off as a liquid, you've got to prime your stove. You got to heat it up to the point where that liquid gas turns into a vapor gas. Some really great advantages. It's super hot, puts out a lot of energy for per ounce of fuel. Disadvantages, tends to be really heavy. A little bit more expensive than a lot of the other stoves out there too. Number 2, very popular stoves out there. They are canister stoves. So they use these little camp canisters. And what these are, this is a compressed gas. Burn nice and blue and nice and clean right off the bat. You can light it right from here. You're cooking within seconds. Lots of options. This one's called a remote canister stove. And then there are sit on top stoves. So you literally screw your stove right onto the fuel bottle. The fuel bottle becomes your stand for the stove. And you have canister system stove, still using canisters. The cook pot is specifically built for that stove. This is the Jetboil, very common canister stove system. You are super tall and it gets really heavy. So tipping becomes more of an issue with these kinds of stoves. They typically have some little heat exchangers down here, which helps to increase the efficiency. And next in line would be alcohol stoves. You have some sort of metal container. You put the fuel in there, you light it, and you start cooking. So this is something you can buy really easily at grocery stores. You can buy it at, I also recommend getting denatured alcohol, not the rubbing alcohol. Rubbing alcohol creates more of a mess. So that's an alcohol stove. Advantages of alcohol stoves, super lightweight. Usually get them for much cheaper than the other ones. Number 4 is the wood burning stove. So this is a stove which has no fuel with it. You're not going to carry any fuel with you, but you need to find it on the trail. So on the trail, you would get to camp and you'd find a bunch of little sticks, some of these pine needles for burning. You put them in here, you light it up, and then you can start cooking with it. So these are great because you don't have to carry any fuel. That's pretty awesome. You can pick it up on the trail. Disadvantages are they tend to be a little bit heavier than some of the stoves. Not all of them, certainly lighter than white gas. They tend to be a little bit more finicky. Like first of all, you've got to have dry wood. Well, you don't get dry wood in the spring and fall sometimes. So that's going to be a little tricky. Sometimes you have to bring extra tools with you to get wood into the right size. Usually you can just burn these little sticks that are sticking around. If you're in an area where there's there's very little fuel, well, then that's not going to work well. They can get really heavy and really fancy if you go with a BioLite stove. Those are the 4 types of camp stoves. Let's talk about what's right for you. First question I like to ask people is, are you planning on winter camping? Do you want to go out when there's snow on the ground and it's super cold and you have to melt snow for your water? If that's true, if that's what you want to do, I highly recommend getting a white gas stove. The energy output for the fuel is better than anything else out there. You're going to white gas stoves in general, my favorite for winter camping. You can get by with a canister stove system. I certainly have seen people do it. You will end up in a situation where you can't use up your full fuel bottle, or better yet is to get one of these remote canister stoves. And the reason why remote canister stoves are better in the winter is that I told you about that fuel. Sometimes you can't get all that liquid fuel in there, but because it's liquid, if you turn the canister upside down like this, then that liquid fuel will still come through the fuel line and burn fine in your in your burner head. If you're gonna go winter camping, white gas, propane, remote canister, canister stove. All right, question number 2. Are you trying to go ultralight? You wanna get as lightweight as you possibly can. Then you basically have 2 options there as well. Number 1, alcohol stoves. No doubt about it, the lightest weight stove system out there is an alcohol stove. It is amazing. You can use any kind of, this is just a cat food can, right? And so you just fill it with fuel, light it. You can make your own gear out of aluminum foil. So you have a windscreen, you've got a heat reflector at the bottom, and you need some sort of pot support. So I often use this little hardware cloth. Put your pot on top, bam, you're cooking, right? So easy, very, very, very lightweight. Many of these systems, your whole stove with windscreen and heat reflect, I mean, everything can be less than 5 ounces. So super, super light. Second lightest on there will be a canister stove that sits on top. This is my current favorite canister stove. So this is the MSR Pocket Rocket Deluxe. Burner head itself is only a few ounces. I think it's 3 ounces or something like that. So that's really light. The problem is the canister. So the canister can weigh quite a bit. A full one of these canisters weighs 13 ounces. That's almost a pound. Whereas, and I can't, I think the other thing that's really key about this is I can't pre-measure out how much fuel I'm gonna use. So if I'm gonna go for 1 night or 2 nights, this is way too much fuel. Yeah, I can get a smaller canister, way more expensive, and also it's still really heavy. It's still gonna be at least a half a pound, even for the smaller canister. It's actually a little more than half a pound. With alcohol, I can use a plastic container like this, or even smaller, like this. The canister itself weighs about 1 ounce, and then I can decide exactly how much fuel to put in. I can put in 1 ounce of fuel, 2, 3, 4, depends on how many meals I'm gonna cook. And so I can be very specific about how much weight I get in my pack. I really like the alcohol stoves, especially for shorter trips. So for ultralight, I recommend an alcohol stove, a little bit heavier, canister stove, sit on top, canister stove. Now, what if you want the easiest stove possible? This is maybe your first stove you've ever used before. That's pretty much canister stoves. Canister stoves are the easiest things to deal with. You turn it on, you light it, you start cooking right away, and you turn it off and you take it apart, and it's just super easy. You can be cooking in 5 minutes. Stick it on, turn it on, light it, bam, that's it. All right, what if you're cheap? What if you don't have a lot of money? What if you don't want to be spending $60 for one of these or $100 for one of these? Then the cheapest stove by far are alcohol. Again, alcohol. The very first alcohol stove I ever used was this one right here. This was a homemade beer can stove, but it'll last for a while, but you will need to replace it. But we're talking about 10 cents, right? And then you take some aluminum foil, you get your heat reflector, you can make a windshield out of aluminum foil. So alcohol, definitely the cheapest stove system out there, even if you want to buy one from a company who makes them. So anywhere around 20 to 30 bucks if you want to buy one, and less than $1 if you want to make your own. So seriously, you can have a stove for less than $1. It's not going to work in the wintertime. Alcohol stoves are not good for the winter, as long as you don't have to melt snow with it. I think that's the key part, because it just doesn't put out enough heat. All right, what if you're into fancy cooking? You want to make pancakes, you want to simmer, you want to make rice. The white gas stoves, these things are hard to adjust. A canister stove, it's much easier to turn it down so you can get a nice small flame, simmer with it a little bit better. It also has a slightly wider head so that the flames are a little bit more spread out. They do make white gas stoves. There's something called the Dragonfly from MSR that you can do a really good job at simmering with. It's quite a bit more expensive. It's about $150 for that stove versus $100 for the stove. And it's really heavy, but you can do a lot of simmering with it. So if you want to do winter camping and you want to do fancy cooking, maybe look at something like the Dragonfly. Now, what if you're looking to boil water as fast as you possibly can? These system stoves are amazing. They're actually designed to put out more heat. Bottom of the pot has these little ridges on there, and it's called a heat exchanger. What it does is as the flame comes up, hits the bottom of the pot and spreads out, or that flame goes through the heat exchangers, and all the surface area of that metal conducts into the bottom of your pot again, and that'll make your water boil faster. Otherwise, any of these canister stoves, they do a great job at putting out a lot of heat really fast, boiling water quick. What if you want to be environmentally friendly? What if you're looking to try to minimize your impact as much as you possibly can? Well, I'm going to start with the negative side and I'm going to move to the positive side. If you want to be as environmentally friendly as possible, stay away from canister stoves. These things they use a lot of metal. You can't reuse them. You can't refill them. A lot of places won't even recycle the canisters, so you have to throw them away sometimes. They also use a petroleum-based fossil fuel. Then we get to white gas fuels. Now, the nice thing about white gas fuels is that you can reuse your canister. So this canister is actually about 20 years old for me. Petroleum-based fuel, though. Alcohol, definitely easy. And all alcohol, as far as I know, all alcohol products, like the denatured alcohols, are made from corn. That's a renewable resource. So alcohol is pretty darn green. Also, because a lot of the times if you're making your own, these are recycled products. These wood burning stoves are pretty awesome because you're just taking material off the ground that you can burn, and that material would decompose naturally. That carbon dioxide gets released back out into the atmosphere as well. So you still have to mine the resources to make the stove. It's pretty green. This one here, the BioLite, a lot more goes into this one, so it's probably not quite as environmentally friendly. But the BioLite's nice because you can also charge your phone, but about 2 pounds to carry one of the wood burning stoves. You get a lot of soot on the bottom of your pot, and that gets everywhere. What if you want a stove that does it all? It does everything. It'll burn white gas when you need to go winter camping. It'll burn propane or the canister fuel, like the butane, if you want to go and just have something really quick and easy, a little bit lighter weight, all that kind of stuff. They do make some stoves that are pretty close, but you can't have it all. There are some stoves out there. The MSR Whisperlite Universal allows you to attach either a white gas canister or these isobutane canisters. So that's kind of nice. So you can have the easy for some trips, and you can have the winter camping really efficient for the liquid fuel. But these stoves will cost you somewhere between $150, $250. I mean, they are expensive, and you're still not going to get all the features. You're just going to get a lot. Hopefully, you now have a better sense of what kind of stove is going to work best for you. If you're anything like me, I have 30 stoves, and I pick the right one for the right trip. Take care, everybody. Eat well, and come visit us at backcountrycuisine.net. See ya.